Hi, I'm Howard Tiersky. I'm the author of the book Winning Digital Customers, The Antidote to Irrelevance. And this video is a supplemental video to the book specifically focused on the topic of analyst reports. I'm assuming that you have a copy of this book, that you've been reading the chapter on indirect customer research, and you're interested in learning more about clever ways of trying to acquire well-researched analyst reports for less money or for free. Free is great, right? So let me start by saying, just recapping something we talk about in the book. There are a number of companies who we call in the book paid analysts. Companies like Forrester, Gartner, eMarketer, IDC, and there are many others, and some that cover specific topics and some that cover specific industries. But these analysts, they're in the business of doing research, data analysis, and publishing insights, opinions, predictions about matters of technology, business, trends, different industries, etc. And by and large, the quality of what this whole industry puts out is excellent and has the potential to be very helpful to you in getting additional data to help you make your case for digital transformation, to help you make your case for investment, or data to help you with your vision, to understand better your customers, what direction they're going, and how you should be shaping your vision of the future capabilities that you need, or even to help you select technologies and think about within a particular area of technology, which are the packages, the platforms, the software companies that you may want to focus your research on. So many ways in which analyst reports can be very helpful to you on this journey. They're really an outstanding resource. They really just have one downside, which is that they can be expensive. Now, I'm sure they're expensive to prepare because these analysts employ large staffs of people who are, all year long spending their time researching things so that you can have this great information. So when possible, let's pay them for their work. And I know many companies that spend 6-7 figures on analyst subscriptions for large numbers of people at their company to have access to all kinds of this data. And I'm sure they get tremendous value for it because they renew it year after year after year. So clearly it makes sense for many of these companies to be spending large amounts of money to pay these analysts for their work. Because after all, as expensive as it is, it's a heck of a lot cheaper than hiring your own army of analysts to just do the work for yourself, right? But having said all that, I recognize that there are times when you just don't have the budget, when you need the insights to move forward, and you may not be able to afford a multi-thousand-dollar annual subscription to one of these companies. And so I want to give you some alternative approaches that have the potential to help get you some of the data that would be helpful to you in hand that these analysts produce legally. And in hopes, frankly, that if it starts to become valuable to you, you can make your case for digital transformation or innovation or whatever you're trying to do, or your new product or your new business. And when you have more funding, when you have more budget, you may decide that it makes sense to just go the normal route and get a regular annual subscription to these services because, as I say, they tend to be very valuable. But nevertheless, I want to give you some strategies that you can use to get started. So first of all, most of these company sites where you can search for topics and browse abstracts. So you might go to the Forrester website and look for something like mobile trends, and you'll see, no doubt, they've published many reports and articles on those topics. And it'll give you a little paragraph description of what's in the articles. So the first thing you want to do is try to figure out whether a given analyst really has the type of information and material that you might find valuable. And we'll try to put on the website a list of some of the top analysts. But I'll tell you right now, the ones I've listed already, Forrester, Gartner, IDC, eMarketer, these are some of the top ones, at least the ones that cover a wide range of industries. So that's the first thing, because, well, frankly, if you're focused in a particular area and the analyst that you happen to be evaluating doesn't seem to be covering, well, obviously they're not going to have what you want. And not every analyst covers everything. Not every analyst covers every industry. Not every analyst covers every technology or type of business application. So you want to find the ones that are going to be meaningful for you. That's not necessarily a tip on how to get the reports for less. That's just a starting point to make sure you're targeting the stuff that's useful to you. I'm going to give you on this video 3 main tips once you know the reports that you're after on how to get them for less or for free. So the first suggestion I want to give, though, is to just figure out what you're looking for. What analyst has reports that you're interested in, and then which specific reports are you interested in? Is it really just one report that an analyst has? Because, guys, I just got to get my hands on that report. Or is it, gosh, these guys are publishing constantly on this topic. I want everything. This is a whole trove of great stuff. So figure that out first. Figure out what you're really after. Then the next thing that I would do, and this is my first tip, tip number 1 to get the reports without having to fund them out of your budget, is if you work for a large company, find out if somebody at your company is already subscribing to this particular analyst. I can't tell you how many times I've been at a large company and been working with a team in one area, one product team, or let's say I'm working with the small and medium business team and they're working on a new strategy and they don't have a subscription to Gartner, but we want some data or information. Well, the first thing I do is try to figure out maybe the company has. The company might have a group like an insights group or a market research, something like, or it might be the marketing department or in IT. But ask around and figure out and see if you can find out who might already have a subscription. And if so, you want to make sure you're following the rules of that subscription. For example, the subscription might only allow certain people who are assigned to access the reports and download them. But nevertheless, you might be able to say to that person, hey, I'm looking for information about A, B, and C. Since you have a Gartner seat, as they call it, you have a Gartner subscription, would you mind downloading these reports? Make it as easy as possible for them, right? Here, I've already looked at the abstracts. I've already identified the reports. Would you mind downloading the reports? And if the license that they have permits them to give you the PDFs, then great, you could do that. If it doesn't, then just say, well, take a look at the PDFs and extract the information I'm looking for. Maybe it's data on certain trends, things like that. Let me know the information that I need by leveraging the investment the company has already made in other people having subscriptions to these services. So that's the first thing to look for. And, I know it's tough when you're in a big company, right? You might think, well, maybe someone does, but how am I going to figure that out? Well, I tried to give you a few places to look. Research groups, insights groups, data analytics groups, and just generally your IT and marketing departments are common places that may have these subscriptions. So use your network, right? Ask around. But here's another tip, and I'm still on tip 1 here, which is finding people within your company who have a seat. You could also call the company. Let's say you're working with, it's an IDC report you want. You could call IDC and say, hey, listen, I'm calling from General Electric or, wherever you're calling from, and say, and I'm guessing that there's some people within my company who have licenses. Can you point me to who? Or is there an administrator at my company who's responsible for the relationship with IDC or Gartner or whoever? Can you tell me who that person is? So you can reach out to that person and let them know what you're trying to do. In fact, I was working with one client once where they desperately wanted some information, and I can't remember which analyst it was from, but they said we couldn't find anybody at the company that had a license for this analyst. And so we called the company, and they said, oh, well, yeah, we do have a contract for 10 seats. And here's the name of the person at the company who is our contact, who is sort of the person who's contracted for it. And it was a totally different part of the company, same company, but totally different division. And we called that person up, and he said, I do have 10 seats, and only 4 of them are in use. So I have 6 that actually no one's even using. And so he said, sure, yeah, you can have one. There's 8 months left on the subscription. We've already paid for it. And we got our own seat assigned to us for the rest of the year because he had it just sitting there and no one was using it. Now, that might not always be the case. But in any case, you could actually sometimes go through the company and they can direct you back to who it is in your organization that has either the seats or owns the contract. And in that way, you can either possibly get one of those seats or, if nothing else, see if you can get connected with someone who has one who could help you get the information. So that's my number 1 tip. And of course, it's not really free. Your company's already paid for it, but it's not having to pay again for something your company's already paid for. So that's tip number 1. And I can't tell you how many times I've successfully used that tip working in large companies. So now maybe you say, okay, Howard, my company's not that large. I don't have 10 different departments to ask around, or I did, and we don't have a subscription to this particular analyst. So here's tip number 2. Very often if you go on the company's website, let's just take Forrester as an example. If I go on the Forrester website and search for mobile trends, I'm going to come up with a bunch of articles, and they're all going to have short abstracts, and those abstracts are going to try to give me a sense of what the article contains. But it's also going to try not to give me too much good stuff, right? Because let's be honest, it's like the trailer for the movie. They don't want to give away too much of the movie. So it's not going to probably give me mobile trends. It's just going to tell me about the kinds of mobile trends that are in the article. And then if I want to read the article, I'm going to either have to buy a subscription or find another way to pay for the article. And that's usually what you'll find on the analyst's website. But here's what you should do. Copy the title of that article and also the name of the analyst who wrote the article, which will generally be with the abstract, and Google it. Because what you'll often find is that company may have issued a press release about that report, or they may have done an article, a blog post about the report, or they might even have some kind of a YouTube video. It could be that same analyst who wrote that report spoke about that topic at some conference or something, and that video is right there on YouTube to be watched for free. And the same information or some of the same information may be available. So once you know that report exists, go back out to the internet and see if you can find some other thing, not the report itself, of course, but some other thing like an article or a video that may contain the same basic information. Because if they're talking on the video, let's say it's a webinar that's been videoed, and they're giving the information about, well, we did this study and this analysis, and this is the data, and this is the trend that we saw, eureka! Now you've got the information and you haven't had to pay for it. Now, of course, if you looked at that analyst and you conclude there's 50 different articles, 50 different reports, and you want them all, then this may be a little tedious, and it may be less, it might just be worth paying for a subscription. But if it's just particularly one targeted thing or a couple of things, this can often get you to great material. It may not be 100% of what's in the report, and then you'll have to decide whether it gives you enough, but nevertheless, you can often find a lot more than what may be accessible just directly from that analyst's interface that's meant to help you browse their reports. So look to that. So that's the second tactic. And actually, I'm realizing I technically think this might be 4 tactics. Well, so the third tactic, actually it might be 5. All right, you may get more than you bargained for here. I'm looking at my little Post-it note. So the third tactic is there are often analyst reports that are being given out for free by other companies. What do I mean? Well, both Gartner and Forrester publish what are called Magic Quadrant reports, or I think they have a different name for them in Forrester, but it's the same basic idea, where they rank different vendors. So they might do one for artificial intelligence platforms. They might do one for CRM systems and another one for content management systems. This is especially true where they're doing analysis of technology solutions. And so they'll do a report that's might be a 75-page report that gives you all the top 10 vendors in a particular place and goes into detail about what they offer and the competitive strengths and weaknesses and why you'd pick one and why you'd pick another. And if you're in the process of looking for a technology, man, these guys have spent months and months and months looking into these products. It's gold. Well, it can be expensive, right? So, but here's the thing. These analysts will make deals with the companies that have scored well on their analysis, and those companies pay the analyst a license fee to redistribute those reports. Now, of course, generally, at least I don't believe that this influences the results the analysts are actually giving, because who's ever going to get to the top is probably going to want to make a deal like this. But the point is, if Gartner does an analysis and they conclude that IBM and Oracle have the best solutions in a particular area, then IBM might say, okay, Forrester, Gartner, what did I say, Gartner, I'll pay you some amount of money and I want to be able to distribute this report. Now, why do they want to do that? Well, because it's a report that is an independent analysis by Gartner that shows that they've got a great product. And so naturally, they want that in everybody's hands, right? Not just the hands of the people who are paying for an expensive subscription. So what you'll often find is that if you go to, like, let's take another example. Let's say it's content management solutions, content management software. And let's say that Sitecore, which is a popular content management software platform, came out as one of the top choices recommended by Forrester in this year's analysis. Well, if you go to the Sitecore website, there might be a big thing that says, we came out in the top in Forrester's analysis, right? They're going to want to trumpet that because they're trying to sell you, and it's a competitive message that they want you to know they were ranked at the top. And then they'll often say, hey, we'll give you the report for free. Just give us your email, your name and your email address, and we'll email it to you. And of course, part of what they want is to get your information so they can market Sitecore to you, of course. But they're also going to give you a report that you might otherwise have to pay several $1,000s for. So one way to find out about this is to Google the name of the report. And you'll often find then, and sometimes there are even ads that those companies have taken out because they figure, hey, if you're looking for the Forrester analysis that compares content management platforms, you're probably looking to buy a content management platform. And if I'm in the business of selling content management platforms that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, I want to know who you are. So even if I really don't know what Forrester charges when you give away these reports, but even if I have to pay a bunch of money to give you that report for free, because it's going to tell you that my platform is great, and it's not me saying it, it's an independent entity like Forrester saying it, it's worth a lot. So you can get therefore the report for free and with no obligation, right? Like you may or may not be seriously considering, like let's take Sitecore. Well, maybe Sitecore came out as the top content management platform, but that's a Microsoft solution. That's like a Microsoft technology-based content management platform. Well, let's say you're not really interested in a Microsoft solution, so you would never buy Sitecore. Nothing stops you from giving Sitecore your email address and having them send you this report for free. And then you might read the report and it says Sitecore's at the top, but it also says there's a couple of other products that are at the top. And those products may not be Microsoft. And you'll be like, oh, okay, I'm actually interested in those. Doesn't matter. And of course, it gives Sitecore at least the opportunity to try to persuade you through their marketing that you should consider their Microsoft-based product, which you can do or not do. And of course, if you get tired of their messages, you can just unsubscribe from their list. So in that way, you can get many reports for free. Now, not all. You're not going to find that's true for every report. It's more often ones that are recommending some kind of software product. But in any case, if the report that you're looking for falls into that category, that's certainly a tactic that can work. So that's my third suggestion. If you remember, the first one was to check around your company for available licenses or people who have them. The second one was to look on the internet for the same content that's just been repackaged in another form but for free. This is the third one, which is to look for people who are actually giving you the actual report where they're paying for it, so you don't have to pay for it because they want your contact information to try to market to you. The fourth is conferences. I have often gone to conferences for companies like Forrester and Gartner, and I have been amazed. You pay for the conferences, but let's say you pay $2,200 or something to go to a conference. They often give you a whole bunch of their reports for free. It's kind of part of the deal, right? You might get, I don't know, I've gone to conferences where they give me like 10 different reports, where if I bought all those reports individually, it would cost me many times more than the conference would cost. Now, maybe those weren't the particular reports I wanted, so it may or may not be the perfect thing. But the other thing that I've sometimes done at conferences is when you go to a conference for someone like Forrester or Gartner, there's usually a whole bunch of their people at the conference. And if you're there as a paid attendee, you've bought your ticket to the conference, and you go up to one of them and you say, listen, I'm really interested in this report, or I'm really interested in that report. It wasn't one of the ones you guys gave out. Is there any way I can get a copy of it? You may get some love. They may give you a copy of the report, or they may let you look at the report or read the report. You may get some access to it. So that's another benefit. In addition to the ones that you get for free by going to a conference, you may be able to talk your way into another report or two for free. No guarantees, but I've seen it done. And you're trying to also let them know that tell them what you're doing and you're running whatever you're doing, digital transformation program or whatever. And this would be valuable to you, but you don't have the budget to buy a subscription, but you did buy the conference ticket. And there's any way to be able to see the report, it would really help you out. And it's worth trying. So that's actually strategy number 4. And the strategy number 5, I guess that's my last strategy, so it is 5 strategies, is you can often buy just a single report. So if you go on, let's say, the Gartner website, and you don't really need a subscription to all of Gartner's reports, there's just one very particular report that looks like it has the data that's really going to be important for a project you're working on. Some analysts actually will give you a price right on their website where you can just say, no, I just want to buy this one report. And they might say it's $850 or $1,250 or whatever else, instead of paying $6,000 or $8,000 or whatever it might be to buy a full year subscription. Certainly if you're going to need multiple reports, pretty quickly it becomes cheaper to just get the subscription. But if you really just need one, you can often just pay for the one report, although it's still not going to be super cheap. But the other thing I was going to say is some analysts don't list that as an option on their website. They really just want you to subscribe. But if you call them up and you tell them what you're doing and you tell them what you need, sometimes you can make a deal. And just let them know, listen, I can't afford a subscription. I really just need this one report. What kind of price could you give me just to get the one report? And I'll just give you one more piece of advice. It's just if they give you a number that's really high, you can always try to negotiate. I can't promise your success, but if they tell you it's $1,200, you can always say, listen, we're a small company, or, of course, don't lie. You have to, be ethical about it, but tell them the situation. I'm working on a small project. It's a big company, but my project doesn't have a lot of budget. It would really help us out, but we really could only afford $300 or $500 or whatever else. And again, you never know until you ask, but you might find that they're willing to make an exception. They're willing to cut the price for you. So, and they're of course hoping you're going to find the report super useful and want to come back to them in the future and maybe wind up getting a subscription or going to their conferences or things like that. So it kind of makes sense for them after all. It doesn't really cost them anything more to give you the report. So worth negotiating. My one piece of advice about that though is I've seen cases where someone read an abstract about a report and got really excited and thought the contents would be really helpful. And the report was like $2,000. And then they bought the report. And then they're read the report, and it didn't have the data they were hoping. Now I'm not telling you, many of these reports are excellent, but just because they're excellent doesn't mean they have the exact specific thing you're looking for. They were looking for specific data on trends of the growth of certain electronics and digital products split out by country. They had a very particular thing they were looking for. And because the topic was sort of being covered by what the report said it was about, they thought that it might contain that kind of data, but it really didn't. So then they felt bad. They'd spent all this money on this report, and it really didn't have what they wanted. I think they might have wound up getting their money back by just calling the company and saying, hey, listen, this really wasn't what I was after. But my other suggestion is you should ask. If you're thinking about buying a report and you read the abstract and you're not sure if it contains what you want, instead of putting your credit card number and hitting checkout, just call the company and say, listen, this is what I'm looking for. This is the report. I'm wondering if it contains this data. Does it? And if so, I want to buy it. And if it doesn't, I don't want to accidentally buy something that doesn't meet my needs. And you usually find they're very accommodating. And what you might even find is that they say to you, we didn't break it out that way in the report. It doesn't actually break it down the way you want, but we do have that data. So if you buy the report, I'll have the analyst send you a spreadsheet with that additional breakdown that you want, that sort of thing. And it's always worth asking. And by the way, if you have a subscription and you're accessing these reports, very often the subscriptions come with a certain number of phone calls you can do with the analysts. But in any case, if you're reading one of the reports and it doesn't slice the data quite the way you want, or it just doesn't answer quite the question that you want, it's sort of the right topic, but just doesn't get to your exact research question. You know, in the book we talk about research questions, right? What is it you really want to know? And if it doesn't seem to hit your nail on the head, after all, you know, you're dealing with your specific situation. The analyst report is written for a wide audience. It may possibly not cover the exact thing you want to know about the topic. You should reach out and ask, because very often, because they're charging you a fair amount of money for these subscriptions, one benefit is they'll just put you in touch with the analyst, and they'll say, hey, you can just email the analyst, the person who wrote the report. And they may come back to you and say, oh yeah, well, I really didn't cover that in the report, but well, here's the answer. You know, we did, or, you know, maybe they don't know the answer, but it's at least worth asking. So anyway, that's not a tip about getting the reports for less expensive, but it's really more about, if you are paying, how to make sure you get the maximum value for the investment that you're making in access to those analyst reports. So hopefully that's useful. As a quick recap, I gave you 5 techniques, even though we only promised you 3, so no extra charge. 1, check around your company. Someone may already have a license or a subscription. Number 2, get the title of the report and the name of the analyst who wrote it, or sometimes it's several analysts, and Google it, because you might find they also wrote an article, they also did a YouTube video that actually contains the same information they're charging thousands of dollars for on their own website. Number 3, look to see if anyone's providing that exact report for free because it makes their product look good, and all you have to do is give your name and email address and tolerate some direct marketing. Number 4, check out conferences. Sometimes you can get amazing amounts of reports just for the price of a conference ticket. Of course, that's not free, but it's still much, much less expensive. And lastly, if you really just want a single report, call up the company, tell them you only want the one report, see what you can negotiate for the best price possible. So those are your 5 techniques. Hopefully that's useful to you. Leverage analysts because they have so much useful information. I've used data for years and years and years. Earlier in my career, when I worked for Ernst & Young Consulting and Capgemini, we had the amazing access to any of them. Any of us could log in and access all these reports, and I use them constantly. In fact, I always was marveling at the fact that some of the other people who were consulting with companies weren't using them. And I thought, you people are insane. You know, you have access to this amazing information because the company's paying for it, and they're just, I don't know, they're just not using it. I mean, it's like anything, right? You can have an amazing resource. It doesn't automatically make sure people use it. So to that point, if you're paying for analyst reports for your company, make sure people are using them. Really encourage them and demand, you know, that if you're providing them this information, that they're actually accessing it and they're actually leveraging it, because it is great. But like any resource, it still takes time. You have to read over the materials and figure out how to apply. So hopefully that's useful. That's everything I could think to tell you in, how long was this? 25 minutes or less, about how to really get the most out of analyst reports and save as much money as you can. So thanks. And I really, really hope that you enjoy the rest of this chapter on indirect customer research and the rest of the